Step 1 of the foolproof financial formula. Identify your market. Where is your sandbox? Where are you going to play? My advice is always this. Go to the cities that you know like the back of your hand, right? I know it's tempting to look at deals in the middle of nowhere that are super cheap and look like they're going to be a great profit margin, but you don't really know the comps there too well. You're not sure of the town or city politics, which is, I'll get to why that's super important, like building departments and such. There's a whole lot of factors that you've got to factor in when you're choosing and identifying your market. So for me, when I first started in my journey, that was the first question I had to answer myself. Pam, what is your market? Identify your market. Where are you going to play? Meaning, where are you going to invest? So the most important thing for me was, since I used to deliver pizzas when I was 10 years old, well, when I was 16, but going on pizza deliveries with my dad since I was 10, I knew the streets of Boston extremely well, most specifically West Roxbury and Rosendale. Those were the two cities within Boston that I knew super, super well, like the back of my hand. And I knew which street had the most expensive houses and then which street didn't, and how one street can make $100,000 difference, which is huge in the real estate investing space, right? Especially if you're going into higher and more expensive properties. When I first started, I was like, you know what? I want to invest solely in West Roxbury or Rosendale, and I want to focus specifically there because I know that like the back of my hand, right? I know everybody in the city. I know the neighbors. I know contractors that can work there. I know all of these things. There's so many different reasons why you want to choose your market accordingly, right? I know some investors who start out and then they go and buy a property that's an hour away from where they live. There's just all these different things, and you really need to choose your market for very specific reasons. One of them, comps and comparable sales, right? So if you know that market like the back of your hand, your pinpoint on value will be key, absolutely key. You will know the value of that property and not have to worry about it because you'll know this street does way better than this street and learn that, right? So that's super, super important. Number 2, so aside from number 1 being the value, number 2 is your relationships. Getting into real estate development, not just developing, but even if you're holding a property long term, you need to factor in quite a few different things. If you're doing work to that property, for example, if you buy it turnkey and you're just holding it for a long-term investment, then that's great. But there's a couple different things I want you to think about here. If you're putting any work into the property or developing the property, renovations, what have you, you have to make sure that you have a good relationship with the building department, right? Every city, every town is very, very different with the way that they do things. And so that's a super key element to you because that can ruin you. And anyone who's watched this and dealt with building departments or hasn't yet will learn this or knows this. And then also knowing your neighbors, right? Like if they know you, they're not going to bother you, right? But if you're going into foreign territory and they think, oh, this is a person that I don't know, neighbors can give you a lot of trouble throughout the transaction. And then most importantly, your contractors. You need to know who's going to be doing work on your property that can get there in time. You can't have contractors that are going to take an hour to get to your property because they could be late on traffic or what have you. And there's just a whole bunch of inefficiencies that happen with project management, construction management at that point. You want your people to be local, right? Even your property managers. Even if you're holding something long term, you want to make sure you have the best property managers in that market. And guess what? If you know that market well, you'll know the best property managers there. You'll know the best contractors who can work on your property. That's why location is so important, not just for the value of the property, but also for these reasons of the project management, the property management, and all that stuff. Something for you to definitely have pinned down so that way you are good to go. Because when you're thinking about scaling in real estate investing, another really important thing is if you're going to have properties that are all over the place, an hour from each other, 45 minutes from each other, or whatever, if you're looking on the map and you're everywhere, there's going to be inefficiencies in your property management. Say, for example, you have a property in Boston and then you go north of Boston, like 30 minutes out, and then you go have something down south. Like it becomes this whole big thing because then there's inefficiencies in your business, especially if you're renovating or flipping or whatever, any types of renovations, because you can't have one contractor go from here to here to here to here to here. It's going to be completely inefficient. So keeping everybody in a central location is really, really key, at least to start, right? So to start, you focus on that one city, own that, crank through that, make your profits there, and then you can scale out to different cities. But you start with one. So you identify your market, you find your sandbox, and you play in it, and it's the best way to start. It's exactly what I did, right? I said, I want to focus specifically on West Roxbury and Rosendale. This is what I want to focus on. and then go from there. And then that's what I stuck to, and I mastered that market. Now I can go out and do different markets and play, in the general vicinity or whatever. But you start with one sandbox, own it, and then move on to the next. So that's the most important thing for step number 1, which is identifying your market.